started here. Thanks for coming. This is our strategic planning forum number 1. Episode 2 or second one last night was Thompson's. It's a pretty decent turnout. Just want to introduce, there's some board members here today. There's Deborah Wright, I saw Joan Murphy. I saw David Franco in here. I'd like to also welcome some of the committee folks, Township committee persons. Mr. Fiore's here, Mrs. Snell's here. Thank you for attending. Today we're going to go over some things. We're going to show some data, some background data that's actually on the website. I encourage everybody to take a look at the district data. A lot of folks who've been involved in the district have seen it. You can look towards the end of the deck. You can see some of the challenges that we're probably going to be facing over the next 5 years. This process is to determine, what do we do for the next 5 years? I mean, we know that state aid is going to be reduced. In total, probably it's going to be about $7 million a year. Will be less in terms of general education funds. Schoolhouse strategies, Dr. George will introduce them in a moment. You will be asked some questions, but please feel free to, any sort of topic that you think things are working in the district, not working in the district, or kind of potential solutions, please feel free to get the mic. I think last night some folks thought you had answered the specific questions. The questions are basically asking you, what do you feel about the district? What are some things you should think of? There are also going to be some cards you can also fill out if you don't want to come up and speak. And we're taking all this data along with the survey, which I hope all of you have filled out. Yes. If not, we're going to keep sending you emails until you do it. We're going to keep texting you and phone blasting you. So I'm hoping this process will be productive. So there's going to be 3 forums. This one's to collect data, to talk about things, to sort of get all the kinds of information, all the thoughts from the folks in the community. The second forum will bring it together a little bit more, start to prioritize, and then by the third one, hopefully we'll start getting some objectives over the next 5 years. And I don't want to talk too much longer. I know Dr. George wants to introduce Schoolhouse so they can get through some of the information and talk about how this process is going to work. So Dr. George, thank you for attending, and please, any folks who can't make it, let them know that it's going to be on video. And we have another one tomorrow, I think, in the morning at Thorn, right? It's the same meeting, it's introductory to get things going. The second and third meetings will only be one. There'll only be one meeting, and that'll be November and December. Thanks, Dr. George.
Thank you, Mr. Little. Successful turnout. Thank you all so much. We're real, as Mr. Little said, and I don't want to reiterate anything he said about that. Your participation is really the board's primary goal in this entire process. All the stakeholders in our school community. We had a great turnout last night. First one went really well. But I am very grateful to the board for bringing the Schoolhouse strategies to us. And it's important for me to do my due diligence so that you know who are the folks that are working with us, giving us expertise and an independent perspective. So I'm gonna start with Lynn Strickland. So I know Lynn better than she knows me, because Lynn is, for 24 years was the executive director for the Garden State Coalition. And the Garden State Coalition advocates for suburban districts like Middletown. So when we look at the pressures and the challenges we face, Lynn has spent a very long time working on those challenges. And just not too long ago, when Miss Wright and I, Deborah Wright's in the room, I think she is, I'm not making eye contact. Raise your hand, Deborah. That's why I'm not making, I was looking over, I'm sorry, Deborah. I was having passion. When we went to Trenton to advocate for special education funding, who was standing next to us? Lynn Strickland. So, just so you know. And former Commissioner Haspy. So, former Commissioner Haspy is not only a former commissioner for the Department of Education for the state of New Jersey, but he also has served as a college president. He also, and I was very impressed by this, when I was looking at his bio, was a first assistant to the Attorney General. So he's had a long, a very successful career in public service, and so a great guide for the board, and making sure, the two of them, that we do our due diligence in making sure that we're getting all of your perspectives. So without any further ado, I think I'm turning it over to you, right, Dave? Because we want to get to what you think.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. I appreciate that. I appreciate the comments of Board Member Little. This is all about you this morning. So we're here to partner with you and try to surface lots of information about the district and then get your perspective on exactly what Board Member Little was indicating. What's your personal experiences? What do you think the district can do together? What are your goals for the community? So 3 people that will be engaging with you through the morning, Dave, Lynn, and Stacy, who is our strategic planning expert and does all of the data analysis. So in many ways, Stacy is the most important member of our team. She'll be capturing all of the information that we have. So I'm going to start with just a brief overview of what we're trying to accomplish. Always good to come with some sense of what we're trying to do. And I always congratulate any district that engages in continual strategic planning, because it really means a constant attention to improvement. So my favorite words in this paragraph, it's a proactive process. It means the board is trying to get in front of the issues that are out there, surface any perspectives that are in the community about what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing, because oftentimes it's very difficult in a large community especially to understand all perspectives and get those perspectives onto the surface so they can be taken into account. It's a common understanding that we're trying to develop, especially, again, in a large district. Sometimes folks have different viewpoints. They see different things. Even as you look at district performance, tax rates, sometimes we see different things, and the purpose of strategic planning is to get data to the surface, get data in front of you so that we're all seeing the same things, and therefore we could start working towards the future. Oftentimes it's good just to find the best possible quote regarding strategic planning. This is really the best possible quote I could find because it really gets into what we're trying to accomplish. First sentence, disciplined effort. We're going to be very deliberative. We're going to let the data inform us. We're going to have the questions out in front. So there's an inquiry process. It's a process of discovery. But also, if you look at the last sentence, what we're trying to do is establish this common understanding of our current challenges so we could deploy towards the future. We can make decisions over the next 5-year period of time. And as you know, this is a very difficult process to go through, because we really are trying to predict the future based upon the present day data and facts. So we're going to spend a lot of time trying to surface this factual information, use your perspectives to understand the data, understand the context, and then come up with some ideas about how to make our children's lives better. Because we try to make this an interesting, fun process, but we always have to remember it's also a very serious process, because we want to serve our children as best we can, and the board is going through this process so that they can do that they can make those right decisions moving forward into the future. The benefits of strategic planning, well, there are many. First, we want to connect the community. That's why you're all here. Matter of fact, this is a great turnout on a Friday morning in October, so I appreciate that. Truly, clearly you're committed to helping the district improve, so that's all great, but that's part of what we're trying to do, is connect all of you together, make certain that different parts of the town are seeing the same things and understanding what role they can play in making things better. Communication is a huge part as well of the process, and then coming together and plotting that path forward. Strategic planning is inquiry-based, so we're going to be asking questions. They're research questions in many ways, and we're going to identify the data that answers these questions. Part of that data is you, right? Your perspectives, your information is part of that data, and then together, using that information and those perspectives, we're going to develop goals and strategies to move forward into that 5-year future. So all good planning processes have normally 3 steps. The first step is where we aspire. What do we want to accomplish? What do we want to do? Second, how are we going to do that? How we're going to improve to accomplish those missions and values through goals and strategic objectives. And then third is we want this to be grounded. So we want to be able to be accountable to you for accomplishing those goals and objectives. So the third part of any good planning process is accountability. We're going to develop timelines and metrics to make certain that we get where we want to be. We're a three-step process. First step, you'll see we're pretty far through. The board has established a committee that liaisons with us to make certain that we're doing what the board and the administration wants us to do. Then there has been outreach, tremendous communication. There's a dedicated web page on the district's website. You've seen broadcasts informing the Middletown community of what the board administration wants to accomplish in strategic planning, how they're going to do it, dates of the forums. And then the second step is to develop this data set. And what we've done, I'm going to go through it with you in just a moment, is create a district profile, around 50 slides of factual information regarding the district, all the way from the district's current mission and goals to a community demographic profile, to student performance indicators, to the district's accomplishments over the past few years, building and facility information and financial information. So you'll see this PowerPoint. It's on the district's website right now. I'm just going to work through some of the highlights of that because otherwise we'd be here till late afternoon. And I do want to turn over to the main part of the morning, that's to hear from you. I'm going to try to get the microphone moving around the room and hear your inputs. And we are right now at step 2. So we are at the community input phase, and if you ever go to Disneyland and you look at a map, it says you are here. So we're at the first forum there. That's where we are, where we're going to clearly define the process and then look at the data and then try to start surfacing as many perspectives as we can so we develop that common vision. Then in the second forum, we're going to turn to the hard work of reviewing the district's current vision, its current mission, its values, what its beliefs are, look at some high-level goals that we might want the district to pursue. So we're going to be getting around tables together. We're going to be asking the groups to work through these issues one at a time. It should be a lot of fun, so I hope all of you come back to the second forum. And then the third forum is where a lot of the hard work in terms of accountability occurs, because all of those goals we want to have timelines and metrics. We'll probably talk about prioritization and resources that need to be deployed to accomplishing the goals and strategic objectives. So if you come to the second forum, you're definitely going to want to come to that third forum, because that's where a lot of the finer points of the strategic plan will be put together. Finally, we have an online survey. It's easy to access. You can work through it in 10 minutes. Right now, I can honestly say I've never seen such a great turnout in terms of the survey. Thousands of community members have already filled it out. I would urge you to do so. I think it's going to be available for a few more weeks, so please do that, because it really does give us a great sense of the community-wide perspectives and viewpoints. So please do that. I'll tell you, it's just been sensational what type of information we've received. Step 3 is where the board now takes everything that's been done through these forums, all the information that we've prepared. We're going to assist them with drafting a strategic plan, and then that gets formally approved by the board. But perhaps the most important is the last bullet, and that's where accountability comes in. We're going to be tracking progress against that strategic plan. The board will be annually reviewing that plan, and it is an organic plan, so it will be updated as necessary and modified to make certain that the district accomplishes those overall goals. So in a nutshell, that's strategic planning, and I'm going to turn next to a highlights of that 50-page district profile. But before I do, let me just stop and ask if we have any questions about what we're doing here. Why are you here this morning? I guess is always a great question. If you have any questions on that, and where we're going. Nope, all good, excellent. Let's go to PowerPoint 2. We're going to load up the district profile PowerPoint here. Let me just give a quick introduction to why data is important to this process. So the first thing is we're going to be using the best data we can find right now and put it into this PowerPoint, which we've done. And this data is going to help us surface what the district does well. It's going to help us surface the challenges to the district, some opportunities that the district may have. Think about it in this way. We use data to inform our lives all the time. Some of you probably are driving here in your car, and your car is constantly giving you information. Don't go to the right because someone's in your blind spot. Your engine's about to blow up and the red light's on. Your gas tank is almost out. So you're getting data constantly in your life, and what that data says to you is, I need to act, I need to react, I need to take certain steps. Same thing with any planning venture, like strategic planning. We want to use data to tell us, all right, we need to do something. We can't ignore this. And oftentimes, in any organization, schools, colleges, businesses, ignoring the data leads to bad things. And so part of reviewing the data, it gives us some real sense of direction as to what we need to do. So for all those reasons, we want the data to inform this process from the first step all the way to the last step. So we're going to get into that data. So I'm just going to hit the highlights now very quickly. Again, this is on the district's website. I urge you to read it through in its entirety, or just go to the slides that interest you. If you're interested in the district accomplishments, there's around 6 or 7 pages on that. If you're interested in the current district goals, they're there as well. Student performance indicators, all laid out for you. Enrollment information, all there. Financial information there, building and capacity right there for you. So I urge you to take a look through it. We'll be referring to it constantly during this process. So it'll be constant presence at forums 2 and 3, because that's the way we develop that common understanding and that common direction forward. So the first information we have is general information about the community. For those of you who have been in Middletown for a long period of time, nothing new, you probably understand it, but things that struck me was Middletown has a very strong history in New Jersey. It's a strong tradition of educational quality in New Jersey for decades. I've been involved in New Jersey schools in some way, shape, or form since the 80s. And ever since I started, Middletown has always had that reputation for educational quality, but it's also unique in many ways. And I think we always need to understand the uniqueness of a community. It is one of the largest, if not the largest, suburban community in New Jersey. Geographically, population-wise, it's very diverse. And that uniqueness presents some very great opportunities for the community, also presents some challenges for the community as well. Just take one example, half of your revenue stream, or actually part of your revenue stream doesn't even approach half, but part of your revenue stream comes from state funding. And state funding occurs through a school funding formula, which applies evenly to every school district in the state. Now, the typical school district in New Jersey is a K-8 district, maybe a K-6 district with 1,000 or 2,000 students. So how does that same formula apply to a large K-12, PK-12 district like Middletown? Not very well sometimes, and we'll talk more about that in Forms 2 and 3, maybe even a little bit more today. So I think we need to always remember the uniqueness of every community we work with. Next, you'll see the district mission, its statements, its belief, its current strategic goals. We're going to look at these in detail in our next forum, so I will not spend a lot of time on them this morning, but I just want to make certain you knew that was part of this data set that you'll find on the district website. Then it's always important to look at the question of, well, what does the district do well? What is it doing well now? And you'll see we have our recent accomplishments for the district, and you'll see that in a number of areas, I think the district is innovating and providing the types of programs and services that students need to be successful. The challenge often is, how can the district continue to provide that level of quality and innovation given the challenge of the future? So as we look at accomplishments, I think that always is in the board and the leadership of the district's mind, is we're doing great things now, but can we continue those into the future with the challenges you're facing? I just will pull out a few of these. New Jersey Future Ready status, sustainability is a huge accomplishment. Your extracurricular groups are receiving honors. Your athletic teams are winning championships. You're putting new programs in place. You have a great crew of National Merit Scholars and a new Arts Academy. Very, very impressive list of accomplishments. Similarly, if you look at student success initiatives, expanded gifted and talented programs, instructional technology, revised curriculum. If you go to the fourth bullet, you know, as a former superintendent, this is huge when I look at this, because we want to serve the needs of the whole student, the whole child. So when you look at these types of interventions being put in place, you know, it's just great to see, and I'm just hitting on the highlights. I could spend an hour on all the district's accomplishments. Hopefully you will go into the website and look at each one of these in detail. The district has a very aggressive technology plan, putting the right technology into the right perspective, and making certain that the advantages are pushed and the disadvantages are limited as best as possible. And you'll see in this plan both instructional and operational technology. School climate and culture, again, you're going to see the district putting in place those programs necessary to serve the needs of the whole child, all the way from the responsive classroom to social emotional support, to allowing students to take the lead through their own leadership programs on serving the whole child. Academic overview, specialized programs. The way I look at it here, I'm just going to point out the ones that I wish I had done when I was the superintendent. The responsive classroom is tremendous. STEM, science, technology, engineering and math, you'll see STEM scopes there. That's how we prepare our students for the rigors of STEM courses in college, is make sure they have a great exposure. In middle school, personalized learning. Actually, we heard a lot about that last night at Forum 1. Student advisories, comprehensive electives. High school, my eyes always come out, as Dr. George indicated, I was a president of Burlington County College, so I'm one of those big fans that county college articulation with high schools is can be expanded to benefit everyone. 13 dual credit courses, that's probably 3 credits, that's probably 39 credits. Having one of your students leave Middletown High School with 39 credits, that's over a year at college. At a private college, that's 60 grand a year, that's a pretty good investment. So I love seeing those. We have the Early College Academy with Brookdale. Again, something I like to see at the very bottom of the high schools, electronic textbooks. That is the future. If you go to most college campuses, in my day, everyone was taking around 15 inches worth of textbooks. Now they just bring their laptop and all their textbooks are on there. So I think that aligns very well with the reality of college and careers. Athletics, extracurriculars, so much going on here. I'll just point out what I on my eyes went to, and that's over 50 student organizations at each of the 2 high schools. You'll see at the elementary level, we have a number of programs. You don't see that often at the elementary level, having a real wide menu of options, and similarly at the middle school level. The middle school level is interesting because what you try to accomplish at the middle school level is to bridge to high school. That transition from middle school to high school is often very difficult for students. Having this type of broad array of athletics and extracurriculars allows that bridge to be a lot easier for students. Staff professional development, I've mentioned this before, this is essential to a high-performing district, and for a district to take pride in its professional development programs, I just think is excellent. And finally, community and public relations. District the size and as unique as Middletown, connecting everyone in all the different elementary schools and neighborhoods and zip codes is difficult. And so innovating and using multi-dimensional vehicles for communicating is essential, and here's some of them. So the next chapter in this data set, this district profile, we're going to take a quick look at student achievement and school climate data. Again, I would urge you to go through all this data when you get a chance. We will not be spending a lot of time on that because, again, it would take way too long. I'll highlight some of my ahas from the data, what kind of struck me as an important trend line. But each of your schools do present on student achievement annually. I'm sure you've seen a number of those presentations, and so to an extent, this is a little redundant, but we'll start with what I think is the ultimate student achievement database, and that's what happens to your students as they leave. What's your graduation rate? And we'll see here that both high schools, their graduation rate over this 3-year period is on the rise, and they're higher than the state average. In terms of SAT scores, again, both high schools exceed the state average, which I think is always the best benchmark. Number of AP courses being taken, dual enrollment. If you just focus on dual enrollment, state average is 13.3. Your participation is a third of your high schools, and your post-secondary enrollment also in both high schools exceeds the state average. Here we then go into the state assessment data. Just a general observation here. On the whole, all of your elementary schools exceed the state average in both ELA and math. Same with your, hold on, nope, yeah, I was looking for the secondary data. It's actually at the very bottom of the page here. Same at the middle school level, and a little more mixed at the high school level. Student growth data. Student growth, of course, is a analytical tool that the state developed in order to understand how the district helps individual students improve from year to year their own scores. It involves a very highly technical peer analysis. But the takeaway here is that the elementary schools are showing moderate growth. The state divides student growth into three categories: low growth, moderate growth, where the vast majority of districts are, and then high growth, where you'll find a few schools. At the elementary level, moderate growth. Now at the middle school level, we see some strong growth, very high level growth at some of the middle schools, which you should take great pride in. There is no growth scores for high school, so we have no data at the high school level. School climate indicators, so we're going to be looking at chronic absenteeism here and school safety indicators. All the school safety indicators are very positive for the district. The district, I think, has taken many steps on keeping the students safe and sound. We describe some of those under district accomplishments. Chronic absenteeism, the district is excellent in the elementary level, grows a little bit at secondary, but still below the state average, so still outperforming the state on that indicator. Let's move to, I'm sorry moving fast, but as you can tell, otherwise we would be bogged down in this. I'm just trying to give you the highlights of this, maybe to encourage you to take some time to go through it all in a little greater detail. Community demographic data. So the takeaways here, population is decreasing. So I have the Census 2000, Census 2010, and American Community Survey 2017 is a statistical tool used by the Census Office of the country to estimate what happens between the 2010 census and the 2020 census, which we're still a few years out from. And you'll see that using those tools, the population is slightly and slowly declining over that period. But note, the population under 18 is declining a little bit more. Why is that? Go to median age, and median age is growing substantially across this period of time, which normally is a general indicator of births. And as you look at the demographic data more deeply, you'll know that the demographer will look at birth data and will look at new development data. So that's your in-migration population. Those are born, and new developments to set the demographics of the district. So this will have an impact on student enrollment. So this is based on your demographic study that was done. Here's your elementary school projections. Don't forget, these are projections, right? We're using current data to project into the future. Just note at the far bottom right, the elementary school, 12 elementary schools are projected to lose 626 students over this period of time. That's about 2 elementary schools of enrollment. A challenge that we need to keep in the back of our mind as we start working through the strategic goals for the district over the next 5 years.
Just a quick question. Just a quick, really quick.
Sure, go ahead.
So on that data, is that taking into consideration the new construction in the area?
Yes, actually that was a issue that came up last night. So let me just slow down a minute, because I know this is going to be a topic. In every strategic plan I do, this always becomes a topic of, do we have the right enrollment projections into the future? Very important for class sizes that are of great concern for parents. And also, are we using our facilities efficiently, which is of great concern of everyone who pays taxes, which is everyone in the districts. Okay, so these numbers are based on a demographic study. So the district had a demographer a few years back study this issue, and the demographer is going to look at data. We'll contact the planning and zoning offices here in the township and ask, all right, what development is going to be occurring during this period of time, and what's it zoned for, and how many families are we predicting moving in, and what what age do we think those families will be? If it's a senior community, won't have as much impact on the schools as a single-family home community will have. So the doctor will take all that information. We'll look at historical enrollment trends. You can look at how many kids are in kindergarten now and get some good information in terms of how many of those will continue in the schools 5 years from now. So the demographer will use what's called a cohort survival methodology, looking at currently enrolled students. And then based on all that data, the demographer will predict what the enrollments may be. So the answer to your question in a longer way than anyone probably wanted was, yes, the demographer does take into account new developments. But if you are concerned about that, we will talk more about that in Form 2 or 3, or by the way, come visit me afterwards and we'll talk a little bit more about that, because it is important point, and we should definitely spend time on it, and we will in Forms 2 and 3. Yes?
I was just curious why they left a year off of the chart, so we don't have 2020 to 2021.
Yeah, that was just historical data up until that point in time, just because we ran out of columns there.
And you say projected 2 years out.
Yeah, so that's projected 2 years out. We ran out of some columns there, but we actually have the demographic study, so we'll bring it. If you want to see what that is, we'll come to Form 2 and I'll have the study for you. But I think we're just historical enrollments are up to that point in time, and then they're projecting out after that point in time. So I think that's all we're trying to say there. I think we could project, I think that's the limit of the projection, actually. That was the last year of the projection, and that's why we included it in there. But we certainly have 2021, but I think you're going to see the demographer basically just steps it up year after year. So it'll be stepped up between 1920, and just as that historical pattern will show you. So we can certainly work that through with you if that's an issue. Class size is a fundamentally important part of any strategic planning. So we always want to keep our eye on class size. It's a huge issue for parents, huge issue for student success. Again, this is all up on the website. Just focus for the moment on the bottom right, where we have the average class size in kindergarten, in grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, and grade 5. Enrollments at the secondary level were a little mixed here. Each one of the middle schools is projected to continue to decline over this period of time, and the high schools are projected to grow slightly during this period of time. Net 138 in terms of those projections. Keep in mind, however, that as most school districts in the state, Middletown is allowing students to move across these attendance zones. This is a very productive, meaningful start. You know, one of the things that we've always been concerned with in education is not allowing any movement at all across attendance zones. And here we're seeing, attendance zones, your neighborhood elementary catchment area, right? And here we're seeing some substantial movement both in the special ed world and in the general education world. So as you think about Middletown as one community, this is some important statistics to look at. We also want to take a look at equity and access in the various schools and in the district. Here we're going to look at 4 subgroup populations in the district: the special education group, students with IEPs, the section 504 group, students who are having accessibility issues because of some disability or other concern, English language learners, very small population, students from low income or disadvantaged backgrounds. All of these are fairly stable except for the number of students receiving individual education plans, IEPs, the special education population, and that trend line is very sharply upward, common in suburban districts in New Jersey right now, probably a little more pronounced than other districts, but still the trend line is the same. We're seeing a sharp increase in students needing specialized programs and services because of a disability. You'll see that's a pretty sharp upward trajectory, which means it's good that the district is making certain that students have the appropriate programs and services. So in a number of ways, this is a very positive development. However, the district then needs to deploy resources and funding towards this subgroup. Let's take a look at how Middletown does in terms of other peer districts. So we'll have key staffing indicators, teacher experience indicators, very solid teacher core, lots of years experience, they're not moving around. Most bring higher degrees with them. The last column, teacher attendance, it's just tremendous in terms of a teacher daily attendance, very committed teachers in the district. Clearly, one area where Middletown, like almost every district in the state, struggles is trying to get minority teachers into classrooms that serve a large number of minority students. Middletown struggles, but so does the state of New Jersey. It really is in many ways a state pipeline issue that needs to be addressed at that level. Key budget indicators. The district is doing quite well in terms of its budgetary cost per pupil. If you look at the peer ranking, there are 97 schools in Middletown's peer group. They are 28th, which means they're in that bottom third of spenders. Now, that means they're being efficient, but the second indicator is the one I always focus on. If you're being efficient, are you doing that at the expense of the classroom? And clearly they're not. Matter of fact, their ranking shoots up to from the bottom third to the average in terms of classroom instruction. So that's what you want to see. When I go out and chat with school districts, that's exactly, we want you to be efficient, but we don't want you to do it at the expense of the classroom. Clearly that's not happening here. Facilities information. Again, we're looking at capacity. So the district will do a capacity analysis based on a methodology that is set by the New Jersey Department of Education. And using that methodology, the demographer will calculate the degree to which schools are being overutilized or underutilized. The positive number means that the school can handle more students, and so you'll see through here that that capacity calculation is coming up with a number that the elementary schools can handle more students. Now, of course, the square footage calculation doesn't take into account how you use your spaces, and it doesn't take into account that older buildings have a much more difficult time accommodating the need for new spaces, group work, counseling, STEM labs, technology labs, and so how you use your space in the district has a lot to do with whether or not these numbers are an accurate portrayal of your individual school. So there's a conversation to be had around this, I guess is my point. But you should understand that this is the square footage calculation and what it's indicating across all of your elementary schools. Same thing at your middle and high schools. Overall, your square footage calculation is indicating excess capacity of 492 students. Now put that against the funding that is going into maintenance and improvement of your facilities, and this is where you get that tension. And oftentimes in strategic planning, we want to focus on that tension between different objectives. And here we have this objective of maintaining all these school buildings in tension with the overcapacity. And this is a challenge that I think we need to discuss a lot more in forums 2 and 3, because ultimately, if your revenues are stable or declining, and we'll talk more about that in a moment, and your costs are going up for maintenance and operations, there's only a few places where you're going to be able to make up that difference, and that's cuts in your academic program. So at the very beginning of the presentation, I indicated that one of our goals here is to make certain that the things you do well now, you can continue to do well into the future, given all the challenges that you'll be facing, and clearly this is one of those. Financial information, your revenues are going to be capped, and your state aid is going to decline, so that's the reality. We know that. I mentioned how the school funding formula will not take into account this a district this size. Matter of fact, in past school funding formulas, we actually had a carve out for large districts like Middletown. Think Tom's River, Middletown, Cherry Hill, all received additional funding because the funding formula recognized the uniqueness of being large. This current one does not, which means you will start losing aid, and you're already losing aid, and that will continue. Your tax rates are capped, so there's a limit to what you can spend unless the district is able to get support of the community and put on a initiative to exceed the cap. If that doesn't happen, the bottom line is the calculation of what will happen to your budget. Read the bottom line as money's got to come from other programs and services in the district, and the question then becomes, can you continue to deliver a high-quality education with these numbers? Just a projection of that deficit portrayed in a different way. And then your just one last slide on enrollments that brings a little more light to that issue. And that is the end of that data set. Thanks for being so good and helpful as we work through it. But I really did want to give you a sense of the highlights of that data set, maybe encourage you to go review it. I do want to turn to our town hall forum here in a second, but let me ask, any questions on that PowerPoint? Yes?
Yeah, I was just wondering why there isn't an analysis of class size at the secondary level?
Interesting. We will work with the district and get that for you. And by the way, as you see things like that, let us know. We came up with 50 pages, but that doesn't mean we couldn't come up with another 50 pages. So things that are important to you, so far we've raised the issue of are all developments included in demographics. So we'll take a look at that. Second issue, look at class sizes in the secondary level. So we'll look at that for you. So those are great things. And part of this partnership we have with you is for you to tell us what information other than this 50 pages that you need. So that's great. Thank you. We'll copy that down. We'll get that for you for forms 2 and 3.
And just as a second,
Sure.
I know there was a big push for AP and you know, just encouraging kids to do that more, but you know, from my own experience, my daughter's in a class with 30 kids in AP classes.
That's high school?
In high school, and another 32. So those are big class sizes in high school. So I was just wondering if anyone's looking at that.
Sure, that's, you know, by the way, that's exactly the type of comments we're looking for, because that then gives us the opportunity to discuss those. If the district wants to expand AP, that becomes an issue that needs to be looked at. So if you could hold that for our strategizing, I think that's great. But actually, we are pretty much taking down everything. Everyone says non-attributed, no names, no pictures or descriptions or anything like that. Just generally, and you're going to see this information on the website as well, so you can see what other people have said at the other forums. So all of this will be available to you. All right, so any questions here? If it's strategic, if it's a question about the data, let's ask it now. If it's strategic, you know, here's what I think the district should be doing. Let's hold that for the town hall.
Class size at the middle school too, that wasn't really included.
What was that, ma'am?
Class size at the middle school.
Yeah, so yeah, we'll look to both middle school and high school, right? The secondary schools.
So on your left.
Oh, hello.
Hi, I have a question about data. So I think it was the previous slide that the $9 million projected shortfall.
Mhm.
So is there any plan, if that number sticks, I understand that could possibly change, but if that sticks, is there a plan about what the district will look like if that cut?
Well, we're going to be asking you that exact question in forms 2 and 3. If this deficit is a challenge to the district, and it definitely is, what should the district do about it?
Right, but as the
So that's the
district
question really
hasn't
we're gonna-
outlined anything yet.
No.
No, okay.
No, because that's still,
Okay.
you don't want to get in front of you.
Okay.
You're going to be asked about that question in Forms 2 and 3, and we're going to think about that, because that's a very tough challenge, and the board really wants your input on issues like that. There's a whole bunch of issues surfaced, that's one of them, and the board's going to want your input through this process, because that is one of the greater challenges. Yes?
Hi, question about the survey. So how many surveys were sent out? And I know you said that there've been a lot returned, but to this point, how many have been returned?
It's an online survey, number one, so nothing was mailed out or sent out. At this point,
Close to 3,000,
And 10, over 10,000 written comments on those surveys.
Okay, so three, and then because we have how many households with children in the schools approximately?
10,000 kids, so some have multiple families, so 3,000.
about 6,000, it's, yeah, which, those researchers out there, that's a pretty good return rate, but that's an excellent return rate on a survey, so.
Will we see that data?
Yeah,
We will be evaluating all that data, and our hope, it's huge, the data set is huge, but we hope to have that all available for Form 2. That's our goal, so we will actually do a presentation of that for Form 2. And, you know, we often see a drop-off of participation in these forums between Form 1 and 2. You want to come to Form 2, because that's going to be just great to see all that survey data. Pretty much, and I've looked through a lot of it. It's really good stuff, so I think you'll love to see that presentation. So a little teaser, I got a teaser every now and then. Yes, and then we'll come back.
Did they going to increase the kindergarten classrooms?
That again is part of that's strategic, so that's part of our conversation. We're going to talk about those class sizes, we're going to talk about what we're projecting, and I think that would be an issue that during Forms 2 or 3, or matter of fact, even later on tonight, if that's a concern of yours, let's understand that a little bit more, and we'll get that down as a perspective that needs to be worked through at Forms 2 and 3. So if you just hold that, when we get to the town hall, I think we'll hear more from you on that, and that's, I think, overall, and you know, class sizes is very important to parents. So I expect to hear a lot about that, and hearing the kindergarten perspective, I think, is going to be great from you then. Okay, anything more just about the data? Okay, yeah, you had your hand up quite a lot.
So back to the survey, how does the community at large, like those people who currently don't have any kids in the system, how do they get the survey? How do they know about the survey? Because they might have valuable input for, you know, kids who maybe just finished going through the school district, or people in the community who used to work in education, like.
I know there have been
how
outreach
those other
efforts
50,000 people get.
to the community, and I can tell you we've seen a lot of community members return surveys, but we actually have someone from the district here who's going to help us with that. So, you want to handle that?
It's been posted broadly, but also we went to Middletown Day and had a booth, went in the booth there, the school booth, all day long. And it's, what's the other thing? We're going to have a senior citizen meeting. They're going to go through and present there. And I think you probably have a bit more too on that.
Chris, is there anything else you want to add to that, our efforts?
Yeah, we've
Since
been.
Chris was all that information.
Hi. So aside from our social media push, our digital push on our website, and our school messenger blasts to the community, we've also been working with the Township. They've been putting it out on their social media pages in their Friday evening, afternoon newsletter that goes out to the majority of our residents. So we've it's been circulated fairly, fairly well.
Okay, just on data and technical stuff, because I think we're gonna really, my goal was to make certain we started the town hall by 10:30. I'll be here afterwards, so if any technical questions I'll handle, but we can do a few more right now, so let's go ahead.
A few slides back, I know you brought up the capacity at each school, and you said it was a square footage calculation, but maybe that's not the best way to do it. Are they going, since class size is such a concern for a lot of us, are they going to find a better way to calculate the capacity at each of these schools?
Well, I think we heard a lot last night about the space usage issue versus the square footage calculation. So I think we'll talk a lot more about that during Form 2 and 3. I expect to hear more about that actually during our town hall piece. But coming out of these first 3 town hall type forums, we're going to be surfacing issues: demographic studies, special education, class sizes, and space usage probably will surface. So make certain during the town hall you speak to that, because I think that issue will surface. And by the way, we're just not going to just write it down. We're actually going to look into that for you. So as you come to Form 2 and 3, we're going to be around tables, and that's going to be an issue we're going to want to work through together. How is that a concern, and should it be a major goal of the district to work through that issue? So that will come up. So two last questions here.
Left is better.
Okay, good. We'll come back as the last. Go ahead.
How accurate have school enrollment projections been in the past? Like every year they project for the next year how many kids are coming, and versus actual. Has it been consistently under, consistently over? Like how accurate are those projections?
Yeah, that's an issue we can look at. You know, I'm not a demographer. I try to play one on TV as best I can. I do understand what demographers do, but I'm not a demographer. But I certainly help you work through some of the questions you have. We might even be able to get the demographer who did these projections to answer some in-depth questions. How accurate are demographic studies? Well, they're taking current data and current data trends and projecting into the future. So there's always some volatility whenever you take current data and try to use a crystal ball to project it into the future. What I look for is the commitment to a methodology and the right methodology to solve the right problem. And so those are the types of questions we'll look at. And I'm sure the district will be able to answer a lot more about past demographic studies and how accurate they've been. Although the town has changed so much over time, I don't really know how much demographic studies done 10 or 15 years ago and how well they projected are going to be helpful. But I think the questions you raise are excellent, and that's to what extent are we comfortable that this current demographic study is predicting the right numbers. And we do have a little history on this demographic study. It was done 4 years ago or so, and so we have a little 3 years ago maybe, so we have a little time under it to see how well we're doing. And we'll take a deeper, clearly that's going to be one of the issues, and we'll take a deeper dive on that in Forms 2 and 3. One last question do we have? Yes?
So going back to the spend in the budget, the number that came up for extracurriculars was 1.8%. I'm curious as to what the breakout is between our sports and, say, our arts music programs. And I ask this as a parent who has kids who are both musicians and athletes.
All right, well, we're going to get that for you. We're going to copy that down. We'll get that information for you, and you now have to come to Form 2. All right. Okay, very last question. We get exactly 1 minute.
I have 2 questions, but it's part of one. Middletown's unique as is Toms River and Cherry Hill so far as size. What happened in the past that we lost that funding, and what can we do to push for that funding again? Because we're unique, and we should get the funding for additional size.
The way state funding works is that it's most of state funding occurs through a wealth-based formula. And so the state takes into account your income and property wealth of your district and your enrollments. And districts whose wealth is declining and districts whose enrollments is declining, not in absolute terms, but relative to everybody else. So you need to be declining more than the rest of the state. You'll receive dollars. If your enrollments are, if your wealth is stable and your enrollments are stable, you're going to lose money because relative to the rest of the state, if you look at the 95 corridors, so the Turnpike, the Parkway, all communities on around 10, 15 miles on either side of that are growing. They're growing. A lot of suburban communities are either stable or declining. And so under a wealth-based formula, you're going to lose state dollars. Now, in the past, other factors have been taken into account. For example, size. So we did have additional aid back under the prior school funding formula for large districts, and I think that's appeals, and I know your district has engaged heavily with legislators in the state on this issue, so it's not like district leadership doesn't understand this issue, but it becomes often a political issue, and it's something we need to think more about in terms of projecting what's going to happen to your state aid. And clearly, right now, if you're asking me, given your stability in wealth and your enrollment stability, you're going to lose aid because other districts are losing wealth, losing enrollments. All right, really, we need to get to the town. So if you could,
I have one fast question. Aren't we losing enrollment as well?
yes, that's exactly.
Okay.
Well, yeah. Yeah, no, but even if you arguably your enrollments were even, I guess my point, I probably didn't make it well, so thanks for raising it. Even if you had stability in your enrollments, so you weren't losing enrollments, you'd still lose state aid was my point. Probably didn't make it well, but we're going to talk a lot more about this at Forum 2 and 3. If you can do a question in 30 seconds, go ahead. If not, then if you could just come up afterwards.
So the data question is significant increase in LD students. So if our amount of money that we're receiving is on the decline, but our need to provide services for children who qualifies on the incline, how do we address that?
I think that's what we're going to look at is, will your state aid overall decline and in what areas? And then I think it's going to be declining. How much? I think we'll be able to estimate that a little bit. Matter of fact, we're in a 5-year phase down in certain areas, so we'll actually be able to get into that a lot more in terms of those individual categories of aid. The good news is there's a portion of like special education aid that is not wealth-based. It's based on a per pupil count, but it's only half. So that means you have to pay not only what the state doesn't pay, but half of the funding that you don't get because the district's wealth criteria aren't right. We have an expert on special education aid right here, so I would urge you to chat with Lynn about that. Lynn is the go-to person on special education aid in the state. Hopefully I just didn't ruin your life, but...
No, it's good to talk about something you have a handle on as opposed to something.
Didn't you just write an editorial on this, matter of fact?
In the fall,
In the
spring, right. I did want to say that the state's formula now for special education aid, if you're not an extraordinary case, which costs about $50,000 per pupil, that's the other category of aid Dave mentioned. But the regular standard special ed aid is done on what's called a census-based formula. So the census-based means they basically take an average and apply it to all the districts in the state, which is about 15% of the student population could be special ed, and they'll fund on that. So while you have 20%, you're only really getting funding for 15%. So that's a rub. And we've actually, I mean, my op-ed piece was about drop the census base. I chaired a special ed task force on school funding for it too, so I do have a little bit of memory on that.
Tremendous experience there. All right.
Here.
Any other questions? We'll be here afterwards. We're not running out the door. So you have business cards of both Lynn and myself up at the front, I believe. We have index cards there as well. We are going to be your partners, which means we're going to be very accessible to you on any questions that you may have. So let's move on to the town hall here, where we want to move this mic around the room, get some sense from you as to what you're seeing and what your experiences are. So things we're looking to get from you are, what you think the district does well, its accomplishments, what are the district's major strengths. We're looking for what you believe the district needs in order to do that job into the future. What would you do in terms of adding a program or eliminating a program to make certain the district is capable of keeping a high level of services in the future. Very interested in the challenges, both internally and externally. Internal challenges could be enrollment declines. External challenge could be state aid declines. Are there things in the Middletown environment, let's say, that we should be aware of as we work together through this? So that's the type of information. Now, don't limit yourself to those are just the types of questions we're looking for answers from. Don't limit yourself, but we are looking for positions. We don't just, positions that you can say, all right, here's the problem, here's what I think you should do about it, here's what I think you need. So it's that type of connect the dots that's super valuable to us. Just some ground rules. So we're going to be holding the mic for you, so we're going to try to move this quickly. We'll hold the mic for you, please. No more than 2 minutes, because otherwise I don't think we're going to be able to get to as many people as we otherwise might want. If someone has had the mic and has said pretty much the same issue you had, I would urge you to consider grabbing an index card. We're going to actually pass those around during this, so everyone has an index card that you can write a comment down if you want, so we can conserve time. If you already haven't done so, and by the way, I don't think I've heard anyone's cell phone going off, but just to make certain that no one gets distracted by cell phones turning on to vibrate. But you've been great. I haven't heard one beep yet, so that's all good. Treat everyone, common stuff. Treat everyone with respect. Be courteous. When you come to the mic, if you give us a sense of your relationship to the district and where in the district you live, reference an elementary school, a neighborhood, a zip code if you want to. So just to get a sense of the room here, how many parents do we have of elementary school students? Okay. How about second, middle, and high school students? Oh, excellent. Staff members, faculty? Okay, good. We have a good number of grandparents, other folks in the community. Okay, excellent. All right, good. And hopefully we'll see some students. I hope there are no students in the room now, because I think that would be, they should be in the classroom. But tomorrow morning at 9:30, I'd love to see some students come on out as well. And by the way, if there's some group in the community that you think is marginalized, that normally won't come out to these sessions, but you think we should really be chatting with, write those down on an index card too, because it's very important that we try to get everyone's perspective. We know that there are some folks in the community who just won't be coming out to these sessions, but who really have a stake in what's going on, and we love to hear from them as well. So I'm going to hand the mic over to, Lynn's already got a mic, and we're going to, if you could just, we're going to start on this side of the room and then move to that side of the room. So raise your hand and Lynn will come to you. In 2 minutes.
All the way over there.
Okay. Okay, so let's start here. Just anyone want to comment here? Because then we're moving. All right, very good. We'll just head on over to where our comments
I see you, but we're going to start here, okay? Because it's on the way.
Hi, my name is Vicky.
I have to hold it.
Okay, thank you. I'm a village mom and a South mom, so I think I have a unique perspective in that I have a child that is already a sophomore in college who's gone from the Village Thompson South Track, a child who's gone from the Village Thompson South Track currently, and one in Village now. Village is always on the chopping block when they're discussing redistricting, and one of the things that I would really like them to take into consideration is that my college sophomore is still very close friends with her Village friends. And one of the things that I think Middletown has done so well as a district is taking a very large district and making them feel very small school community. And last year when they wanted to redistrict, Village was going to be split twice. It was going to split at the middle school level and then at the high school level. And so when you take that into consideration, I want you to take into consideration how those children would feel. As a mother with a sophomore in college, she's still good friends with all of her Village friends. And so if we're redistricting, it has to be town-wide, not middle school.
So the attendance zone would split the development, is that what you were saying?
Last year, they wanted to split Village.
Okay.
And Village was the only school on the chopping block.
Okay.
And they wanted to take just a handful of Nut Swamp, which was also, you're taking just a small percentage of the district to redistrict. And if you're gonna redistrict, and you
Should be
need costs to
district-wide.
come down, right, you have to look at busing costs, everything.
I think we captured that. That's, yeah, by the way, we're gonna ask you questions too. This is not a,
Right.
we like to keep, this is like, we're partners, so we're gonna have a conversation, make certain we really understand what you're saying, and I think we captured that, so,
Right,
so
yeah.
thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
That's fine.
Anybody?
Yeah, right here.
This is more of a comment than a question. Sorry. I'm a mom at Village also. I would just encourage everyone who hasn't to watch the video of the meeting, the most recent Board of Education meeting from the end of September. Go on ahead to the end where they start talking about what's going to happen with the new developments and maybe where those students would be enrolled. Just be informed about the fact that the discussion is already happening in the Board of Education meetings, and maybe you want to go to the next one if you're concerned about that, because there's a lot, when you get to listen in on a conversation that I didn't know existed until 2 days ago when someone who was at the meeting let me know. So if you have a few minutes, just put it on the background while you're doing something else. It's enlightening.
Thank you.
I don't believe it.
Hello, I have a student who is in the special education program. We are from New Monmouth originally, New Monmouth, and he lives here at Bayshore and now he's at High School North. And sort of to piggyback on what she was saying about the homeschool situation, as far as special education is concerned, the students have to go all over the place. New Monmouth is our homeschool. He started out at New Monmouth. He went to Bayview. He went to Harmony. He came back to New Monmouth. Because of the programs, New Monmouth doesn't have an LLB program. So he was in a self-contained autistic class, then had to go out and try Bayview and Harmony. And because all the support wasn't really there, it didn't work out. He ended up back here at New Monmouth. And I would like to see for special education, especially because those students really have difficulty forming relationships, that they should be able to go to their home school and if all those needs met right there at the home school and have the opportunities for the different classes for those students.
Yeah, so I think we can definitely have a conversation on that. I know the district is looking at that issue on how to bring more inclusion on, different needs. Students have different needs in the special education program, and trying to include as many of those needs into the elementary school, I think, is an objective of the district. So I think we'll talk more about that and hear more from the district on the plans into the future during Forums 2 and 3. But we got that comment and we've captured it, so thank you very much.
Hi, let's come over this way. Yes, so I have a daughter in South, and she is also a special needs student, and I wanted to commend the district. I think one of the things that we do really well is technology, and being a legally blind student, she's highly dependent on that, and I think Middletown has been really at the forefront nationally of a lot of things that we're doing to provide accessibility, and that really is built on the strength of our technology. So I think that's an amazing thing, and we're very lucky to be here. Another role I guess I play in the district is that I am also on the parent advisory group, and I'm a co-chair there. And so I kind of wanted to bring back some of the things that we hear consistently in those groups. And I think two of the biggest needs, and I could play it like a record, is inclusion and dyslexia. At every parent meeting monthly, we have a lot of stories about parents wanting their students to be more fully included. Right now, our inclusion rate is pretty much the state average, which isn't great. If you know New Jersey, that is at the bottom of all the states for inclusion. So I think that is definitely something that we can do better, and we would have to really develop a very strong partnership with curriculum and the general ed folks in order to do that better. So that's something that we hear a lot, parents wanting their kids to be more successful in the general ed area and have more opportunities to be around their typical peers. And we know that inclusion is great for all students, even students without disabilities. The other group that we hear a lot from is those students with dyslexia. That is very difficult because a lot in that population has a high incidence disability, and a lot of those parents feel that their students aren't receiving the services, and it becomes, we hear a lot of sad stories of kids with high IQs in restrictive settings that aren't reading sometimes well into middle school, or they're many grade levels behind. So those two areas are really, I think, big and important areas for development. And then just as a side note, as far as data, I think it would be really interesting to look at what is the cost of disputes and dispute resolution. I know that
Special education?
yes, because I know that OSEP tracks numbers of mediation, numbers of filings, settlements, etc. And I think it would be interesting for us as a district to track that and to understand what is the cost, what happens when we can't get along, and we can't, solve it, and what does that do to our litigation costs. And there's the cost of, just what that means to families and students. So.
Yeah, the administrative costs in special ed are high across the state. So I think we could try to get a little more granular on that for you. In terms of dyslexia, you're absolutely right. This is a huge conversation statewide, a very difficult population. Matter of fact, it's just a population nationally we're just waking up to over the past decade. So I do think there's a lot of work to be done, although my observations is this is a county that actually is doing better than most, but still a long route to go. But two very good comments, and we captured three very good comments, we captured all of them, so thanks. Which way do you want to go?
I'm gonna go here and then over there.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, my name is Stephanie. I have two elementary school students. I have one in River Plaza, which is our home school, and then I have a son in special ed, and he's bused over to Bayview. He's in 3rd grade. I am very happy with Bayview and River Plaza. My son has made great gains in the special education program, so I actually have a good story to tell, but I think two places where I would like to see the district do a little better is if special ed students can't go to their home school, which I'm okay with. Like I said, I have a good experience at Bayview, giving them more opportunity to engage with their home school. So for instance, when there are extracurricular activities at their home school that they could be included in, I think that's really important for them to have those opportunities so they can meet their peers in the neighborhood. And River Plaza does a great job of that, but I feel like I've had to insert myself in order for that to happen. So I think if there are just more opportunities like that in special ed home schools, that would be great. And then one thing which I've documented to Dr. George already is aftercare opportunities for children with special education. Currently, the YMCA does not provide adequate aftercare opportunity for children with special needs, and it is a big issue personally for my family, and I'm sure for other special needs families in the district. So I think it's extremely important that aftercare opportunities are provided for children with special needs in the district.
No, thank you. Those are two excellent comments. Matter of fact, need for more inclusion, and you gave two really good ideas for how that could happen. So thank you for that, and we definitely got that down. So thank you very much, and we're going to keep moving. To the extent, if you have any, just I don't know how many steps Lynn wants to get in today. Have we hit our 10,000 yet? But to the extent we could get hands up in the general area, that would probably be good for Lynn's wear and tear here.
So I just sort of want to talk about the allocation of special education trainings. We train our LD professionals in the Wilson method, yet we don't provide the Wilson method ever in district. And when you are pressed to talk about it, we are giving a eclectic approach. So for example, in River Plaza, both of my kids have IEPs. My daughter is a perfect example of when you intervene quickly. She now reads above grade level with her visual processing. My son is multiply handicapped, and I find it very frustrating that we pay to train these professionals. When you go to court to litigate and you say, I want my child to receive Wilson in order to access the curriculum in its entirety. That means science and history as well, where we don't provide any SPED support if you are in an inclusion setting. Then you can say to the court, well, we have X amount of Wilson trained professionals. And so that helps, it's cheaper to keep her, but no one is receiving Wilson, and they're getting pushed through, and my son can't read.
Okay, we will capture that, and we'll chat with the district and try to understand that a little bit more from their perspective. But thank you. That's great. Okay, I think you can go this way, Lynn, and
Oh,
get
thank you.
3 people. And then we're going to have you move John back. Actually, why don't I do this? If you stay in that corner, Lynn, I'll stay in this
Okay.
corner, and that way I think we'll cover everybody.
Hi, my name's Tara. I have a 6th grader and a 4th grader. My children started their education at Harmony and are now at Nutswamp and Thompson. And the one thing I would like for us to review as we go through is the technology curriculum for the elementary. It's made leaps and bounds since we started. The one-on-one initiative, I've watched that come to fruition. It's amazing with the Chromebooks. However, they do spend a lot of time with coding right now at a young age. And I don't believe that they're really grasping typing. And a lot of the standardized testing is all typing and writing, and they're still going like this. So I think that would be one of the things that we should definitely look at, what the curriculum is, how it works across all the elementary schools to make sure they're all together. And one other issue I'd like to just bring up is also coming from Harmony and then coming over to Nutswamp, where we were feeding into Thorne and then North, and now we're going into Thompson and South. We see in the numbers how South is projected to be over our population. My daughter is in the 4th grade group that is also a larger grade. I see her coming in. I have to question going forward. I know we do have areas that they are zoned for North. They can choose to go to South, and because everybody goes to South, they all go to South. But if we see it happening this many years in advance, how can we work through that and look at that going forward where we can stop that from happening for our children that are now in these elementary school grades, knowing even though the population is declining right now, those 4th graders, they're going to get to South and it's going to be huge. So just some things I'd like to evaluate.
You know, two great comments, because we are preparing our children, our students for a future. That could be a career, could be college, and so many of them actually are finding it. My own son lives in New York, and he works for a data startup there, like so many 20-somethings, and that was his biggest, is that he does a lot of code, and he said they really didn't understand how quickly or how not quickly. Matter of fact, you saw me last night. I was doing a lot of typing, and I am the fastest 2-finger typer in the world, which means I'm about as slow as you can get, and that's very important. So that's a great comment and something that we can talk a lot more about. So thanks for that, because it's always important to understand that the goal here is to prepare students for careers and for college, and that means we do have to focus on things like that. So thank you very much.
I just want to say on my way to the next person, just to remind you that Stacy is typing all these comments, so when Dave says we captured it, we really captured it.
But is she doing it with 2 fingers?
I think she does it
on the type
all fingers close to feet, too.
Hi, I'm Stacy. I'm from the Wingcroft side of town, and I have a student in Thompson, and I have a student at South. I'm actually a graduate of South from way back, who moved my children back into the district at the higher elementary and lower secondary years to get back to this education. I've been very pleased with the education that the district offers and the services that they do provide in the years that we're here. I do think there's 2 things that I would like to see addressed. One is, I know there's a big push on the technological aspect and moving to electronic textbook, and that's wonderful, but there's also been a big push in the district this year to take younger students and enroll them in AP. So you have freshman level students taking AP classes, which is a great opportunity for them, but when you're tasking them with a history class that has a 1,400-page textbook, and their only access is to do that reading online because there's only one set of textbooks ordered for the entire district's classes for each high school. I've now spent $200 buying textbooks so my kid has the ability to read at night and not spend 5 hours trying to work through a screen to get that content and understand it to a point that they're able to then be successful in the class. And I think there is a huge difference between screen reading and being able to do 65 guided reading questions on something on the screen and being able to flip back a few pages in the textbooks. Oh, I remember reading that. I saw that a couple of pages ago. In terms of not only the
retention of the material, but also the ability to reference that and then perform well in the classroom. So I do think there is a little bit of a disconnect there with the electronic textbooks and certain levels of class in the district. It may work really well for like a 6th grade science class, but it may not work as well for an AP student who's being expected and tasked with mastering that material for an exam in May. So that was my first. I forgot my second and talking so much about first, so you can come back to me.
Or just visit us afterwards, but that's exactly the type of thing we want to be focusing on. Because again, there's a tension there. And that conversation, I think, is happening in just about every school district, every college, every university right now is how can students access the materials in a way that best fits their learning mode. And so it's a great conversation to have and something to stay focused on. So thank you with that. Lynn, I think you can keep going.
Okay.
You don't have any hands over this way. So keep on going.
Hi, my name is Stephanie. I have a child in Leonardo, in Bayshore, and at South. And just to piggyback on what she said about the textbook, my daughter is in 6th grade at Bayshore. She tried to take her first history test without a textbook, and I guess attempting to read it online, she got a 52. I made her ask the teacher to bring home a textbook, which she allowed her to do. She sat the other night, read it in bed, and she got an 80 on her test. So big increase, being able to flip back and forth when I asked her questions, and not having to, scroll, and their eyes get tired being on a computer all day. And so that's that. And then one other thing, dyslexic comment over here. My student in Leonardo, she's in special ed and she has dyslexia, and it's a very hard conversation because once you get them, they don't like to recognize dyslexia because then they have to provide the Wilson. I just was sent on a wild goose chase when I asked, she's up for reevaluation, well, I want her evaluated for dyslexia. Ask your pediatrician. The pediatrician's like, ask your school. They had her go to a neurologist that was recommended by the school. They made the appointment. I went when they said, I asked the neurologist, he's like, I don't discuss dyslexia, deal with the school. So you're just in this circle of, if she has dyslexia, then she needs the Wilson, but then they won't provide it because they won't say it. So I think that's a big issue, that everybody needs to be on the same page and recognize it as a learning disability, and not just specific learning disability and reading.
Right, I think you captured the struggle very, very well there. And I was distracting Stacey at the very beginning. Did you get everything you need on that? I was just asking you. She needed a break
You have
right
a child in Bayshore and a child in South, correct?
And Leonardo.
And Leonardo, so 3 children. Got it.
3 children. 3 girls.
Okay, this one's been waiting for a while.
Come back.
This one.
It's okay.
Lovely lady.
You can hold it. My name is Christine. I have 2 children that graduated from high school north. I have an 8th grader at Bayshore, and I'm from the Fairview section of Middletown. So I've had children in this district for a long time. This is the same data that we have been looking at for the last 5 years. I have sat on 2 committees that made recommendations to the Board of Ed and to the district. Mr. Graham was on one of them. What's different about this process this time? Am I going to go to all of these meetings, God forgive me, waste my time sitting through the same presentations again of the same data? Are we actually going to do something different? Or is this just placating all the people sitting here? That's my question.
Well, it's not unusual to go through a similar strategic planning process.
3 times.
Yeah, every 5 years you go through a strategic planning process. The way you make it different is you come to these forums and we participate in developing these goals and objectives. By the way, I do many of these. When I was a professor at Rowan, I did a tremendous number of these, and it really is your participation that makes the difference. And I do think that you should hold that comment until you see the product in the end, and then by all means, let's talk about it. But that's sure.
My issue is I have yet to see a product from all of the time that I've invested in going to these meetings and sitting on these committees. I haven't seen any real change. I haven't seen anything address. I shouldn't say that. There has been some changes to middle school schedules, which have been wonderful. But as far as the demographic studies going and our issues with development, this has been going on for 6 years. Are we actually going to address it this time? That's the bottom line.
Well, I think at Forum 2, we're going to be reviewing the district's current goals. And so why don't you weigh in on those current goals and let us know exactly which of those goals you don't think are being implemented, where there should have been a goal that there wasn't. So that's, we're talking about that exact issue. But I'm more, I go into this very optimistic that we are going to come up with something that the community can see in common. But no, it's always a good perspective to have that in order for this to be meaningful, we need to listen to you. So I think that's a great perspective to start this process with. And we'll, hopefully every single meeting we'll air that out and make certain that that happens. So thank you.
My name is Danielle Walsh. I have 2 children in high school, 1 in middle school, Lauren and North. I was also a board member. I don't disagree with Christine. I've been trying for years. We try to get information. Vinnie Brand can probably attest up front. We have been looking at this information. What I think we need is much more specific information. I think we need a cost-benefit analysis of each of the 12 elementary schools. We are losing millions and millions of dollars going across. So when we say, and I'm using stupid numbers because I don't remember the exact numbers, that it costs $10,000 to educate a child in Middletown, that is a very general statement. X school could be 55 years old and need millions of dollars in repairs over the next couple of years, and staff and students, and have classes with 8 kids in it, or 10 kids, or 15 kids. So you know what, now that student, it's gonna cost $25,000 to educate that one student a year, compared to maybe a school like, and I don't wanna use specifics, that's like, compared to maybe a bigger school like Nutswell, where it probably only costs $8,000 a year, because you have more students in classes and more. We need real data to work with. This data is, it's 5 years old. We have 12 schools. We need really in-depth cost-benefit analysis that includes building ages, the amount of staff, how much it costs to run each school. I'm being very analytical here. I love our neighborhood schools. That said, I think as taxpayers, us, our seniors, people who don't have students, need to know how much it costs to keep each one of these schools open and running, and then make a decision. Because if we decide we want to have our taxes raised to keep 12 schools open because we're losing so much money, that's great, that's our decision, let's do that. But let's make an informed decision, because telling us that it costs $10,000 a student across, a town as big as ours, that's not true. It's not accurate necessarily. It's an average, it's a true average, but it's not accurate as in X school might end up costing someone $30,000 when you include, we have a lot of schools that are 50+ years old that are gonna require a lot of maintenance over the next 10 years. That has to be addressed in the strategic plan, because I agree with Christine, otherwise we're just running in a loop over and over with the same data. We need new data, we need better, more in-depth data.
We need data that answers that question. And so I think that's part of what we're trying to accomplish in these first 3 forums is, what are the questions we need to answer? You just posed one that I think is excellent, by the way. What are the costs of the various schools? And what would you save if you didn't have that school open? I think that's an excellent question to ask, because it does get to
I'm not advocating closing schools.
No, but
you have the choice of where your tax is going, so please don't attack me like Danielle wants to close schools.
Oh, by the way, asking questions is good, because you're not taking a position. You just want to ask that question so that we have the information we need. And I think that makes sense.
Make an informed decision.
This is an inquiry-based process, so we want to ask a lot of questions. Asking the question doesn't mean you have concluded, but you want to ask the question and get the information. So part of the process is that, and we've got that captured, and I think we're going to be able to try to get that data for you. So thanks for raising that. By the way, if anyone else has other questions that they want data answered, please let us know. That's part of what we're here for tonight. Have a nice morning.
I have a big mouth, so I probably didn't need to wait. Just real quick, I have a real question, but the typing, I guarantee all of us here will tell you that's the only subject that we learned in school that we use every single day. So thank you for pointing that out. I tried A space SSF to my kids, and they try to use it. Also with technology, again, thank you for bringing that up, because we try to instill in our children, or at least I do in my home,
guys, no electronics, get off that. Meanwhile, in school, all day, every day, it's forced in their face, and they're totally, my kid gets, can I go on the iPad? I'll do Dreambox. You know, like, it's this whole thing that it's going against everything I'm at least trying to teach my children. But last, and God forgive me, because I love Ocean Avenue, so I have a 5th grader there, and I have a daughter in 7th in Thorne. They went to a no homework policy, which was amazing when I had my daughter in elementary school. There were no more fights. She would just do her reading. It did not help her when she went into middle school. I also know, I spoke to another parent whose son had to go to summer school last year because he was behind because of the no homework. So as amazing as it was, my daughter now, it takes her like 3 hours a night to do her homework because I didn't understand the need for her focusing better and more, and I think that could have been headed off if they kept it in elementary school.
Excellent.
But
Thanks.
don't quote me.
Very good. Like I said, this is
I'm not
as close to
showing
the
the camera.
confessional as you can get here. So, oh, by the way, we're capturing all of your comments, but no way we're attributing that in any way to
It's
you.
on camera, but
They can see that.
Yeah, that's why that camera is there, is that unless we can identify it from the back of your head, I don't think we had much problem. By the way, I think everyone, just as we indicated before, that none of this means this is what you want to happen. You're just asking questions. You're looking for information, which is what exactly we want. We're partners in this process of discovery, and so we'll see it all as that. All right.
I have one quick question for you. So when you're standing at the corner or by your car to pick up your kids or whatever, does this conversation come up often about no homework policy, or I mean, is it something we talked about with other people?
well, I've spoken to some other parents who said, yeah, not having the homework. There's also a Facebook page, and you'll see sometimes where the kids are struggling. What I would just recommend is don't give the math and science and social studies homework all in one night. Like have Mathematic Monday and terrific reading Tuesdays, that sort of thing. So I'm not saying bring it back in the form it was, but I think it truly helped prep them for middle school. Thank you very much.
Right next to you.
Yeah, I don't mean to jump in line, go ahead. And I realize this is probably an unpopular opinion. And hearing everybody talk about special needs students, I 100% agree that that's where our resources should be going. We should be serving all of our students to the best of our capability. But I am admittedly like a crunchy, environmentally conscious person, and this school district does nothing to address our impact on the environment. Like, the schools aren't like actively recycling. I mean, we put in water bottle refillers, at least in our elementary school. But we talk about being like a progressive district that is taking on the future, and we all have our Chromebooks and our technology, but the amount of trash generated is disgusting, in my opinion. And we're not giving our children the skills they're going to need to survive in the environment aside from technology. Like again, I said I'm crunchy, so this may be just me, but I'd like to see our district really stand up for that part of our children's future.
Well,
I'm not crunching, and I agree with you.
Actually, that has, in some strategic plans that I've done, that has actually been a strategic goal now of the district to become more environmentally conscious through all types of initiative programs. But I would note the district does have the future ready designation here, which does mean they are pursuing that in some ways.
That probably means you have a blue trash can next to a regular trash can in your classroom, and they're both just full of trash.
Right.
They're both just full of trash.
I've seen that. It's a great goal because I think everyone learns. Your students, your children will learn from that as well. I think we just need to find out what the district's doing and what then you think remains to be done, and that's a great conversation for Forum 2, which I hope you come to.
I'll be there.
Awesome. Yes. I'll be nagging about that all night long, by the way. So forgive me, but I really want everyone to come back for Forum 2.
Hi, my name's Katie. I have 3 children, 2 at River Plaza, 1 at Townsend. I benefits everyone. My general education student is definitely one of the most compassionate people I've ever met because he lives with his brother who requires him to include him in a lot of things. I see him, my older son, who has been surrounded with a really good core group of kids that support him, and I've seen the benefits of that. But I'm concerned when we talk about class sizes and things like that, inclusion is only good if the system supports the kids who are included. Because it's not just like, oh, we include everybody, they're all in the class together, and they have class parties, and it's really fun. Like, you know, if the class size is 28 kids, and there are 8 kids with IEPs in that class, and one teacher who does not have a special education background, the teacher could be amazing. And this has happened with my son. Amazing, amazing teachers that just don't have enough ability because of the time and the resources in the classroom. When you have 28 kids, you, like any of us who are parents, you can't split yourself up in all those places. You have to choose where your resources and your time goes. So inclusion is awesome and important and really valuable for our students. But the class, like, we can't say, oh, we support inclusion in Middletown, but say, all right, well, you know, unfortunately our class size is going up because of budget reasons, because it's not going to benefit everybody if you have a stressed out teacher and students that aren't getting their needs, if their needs are not being met.
Great, thanks. It helps us get a little more granular on that issue, so thank you, that was very helpful. Now, I'm just going to move a little bit away from your Lynn, just because we're going to feedback for you to be close. It's not anything personal. Did you have some questions right here?
I'm loud too. So following up on, listening to what people are saying and following up on a couple of points, particularly the point that Danielle brought up about the data and really diving into the data. I say this as a Middletown South graduate of the 1900s. Those of us that are old enough to have been in school in the last century, as my children like to comment. My daughter is a sophomore in South this year. My son is a 7th grader here at Bayshore. And I convinced my husband to move to Middletown from Westchester County, New York. And what I have observed, what I've become aware of as an adult, having grown up been at Thompson and been at Village before it switched over to South, and my parents sold the home that we lived on off of Laurel Avenue because, you know, there was a new high school that they learned about when we came here in 1977, and they were told it was better to go to the other one. And so, of course, I live in Navesink so that my children could go to Navesink school. Bayshore's been wonderful, and sending them to South. The points that Danielle brings up, I think, are so important because there is an emotional response that we all have, right? I moved back to Middletown, my kids are going to South because that's better. Is it better? I think it's better. In my gut, it's better. I look at some of the data points and I say, well, more kids from South are going to come. More kids from South have a higher grade on this, that, or the other. But then there are other things that are different. So I think the point that I come back to when I talk with people about any of this is that when we talk about our districting, when we talk about our high schools, and good luck board and good luck Dr. George, that's the third rail issue in Middletown, right? Because my visceral response is, if my kids get moved from South to North, oh, I gotta sell my house and move. That's my visceral response. But the data may tell me something different. So for any of us, right, the data is very important. And I think I have also learned as an adult and through my profession, I'm a licensed clinical social worker, I work in behavioral health. There are 2 Middletowns. Let's not kid ourselves. We function as 2 very different towns, right? People talk about the west side. Well, I now live off the 36 corridor. I'm all over that part of town. As a kid, I never set foot there. Kids who grew up on the west side, you know, who then moved and left or so, I never went to Lincroft. So I think we also, as a township, but certainly in this process and for the district, need to be looking at some of these, as we've been talking about them, social determinants. What are the things that are brought into our schools? What are the services, what access do kids have to enable there to truly be an even playing field across the district, where we have very different data, whether it's the cost per school to educate students, whether it's the resources that kids have. You know, there are schools in which somebody will say, well, you guys should be fine with this. Your parents can afford tutors. Let's really think about some of those things. And it's sticky and it's yucky and it's messy and it's emotionally very challenging. But I think it's really important.
Yeah, thanks for surfacing that. You know, some issues need to be surfaced because otherwise they just lurk in the deep and never get addressed. So thanks for that, and I think that brought some more clarity in some of the other comments. So,
and I'm going to piggyback on that. So I have, I guess, somewhat of a unique perspective in that I have a child who goes to school on the other side of town, on the west side, goes to Bayview. My daughter goes to River Plaza. We live in River Plaza, and I would say that it's all the same, really. I mean, the parents at Bayview are just as involved as the parents at River Plaza. The teachers are just as dedicated at Bayview as they are at River Plaza. And the principal is amazing at both schools. I feel both of my kids are getting a good education, but I feel like there's a perception that it's different. And so I think that people really need to look at it as a district. We're not just about your home school. It is an entire district, and it's the parents on the other side of town are way more similar than you think they are, and the schools are way more similar than you think. And I say that from experience, because my kids go to two different sides of town. So I think it's an important perspective to let parents know you don't have to be afraid of the other side of town.
I just have a question. I'm Ann from, I actually grew up in Middletown. My family did Village, Thompson, North. I just want to know, 30 years ago, and it's still like this today, why is there a certain part, like where I grew up, behind Sears, Apple Farm, Heights Terrace, why are they allowed to choose north or south, but then you have people who go to Bayshore? No, you're going to south. No, you're going to north. And there are good, I have 8th graders who are friends with 8th graders at Bayshore, and they're already talking, I'm going to lose my best friend this year because she's going to south and I have to go to north. But why is there a certain area that gets to choose? Just a question, and it's been like this for 30 years because, like I said, I was Thompson North, and all my friends went to south, and my mom's like, oh, you go to north. We moved from Brooklyn. I would have to bus you to north, or no, drive you to south, but I'm just asking, when was that determined and why is that still in effect? And how come Bayshore doesn't get a choice, but Thompson?
30 years.
We moved here, I think, 86, and it was Village, Thompson. We had the choice, and I know because it's sad, like, North this year couldn't form a freshman soccer team for boys. They couldn't form a freshman field hockey team for girls. And meanwhile, maybe at South, you know, that's where it comes to there's so many and there's not enough. Which, you know, only 6 players got to go to the JV North soccer team. You know, and that's something growing up here. We look forward to being able to play sports in our middle school and our high school. And then 6 kids had to get cut that, I don't know, it's just...
Yeah, so we don't know the answer, but we will find the answer.
Yeah,
and we'll disclose it at the forum too. I'll see you back there. Actually, if you can't make a forum, you ask the question, just email us and we'll get you a comment. We want you to have the information. All right, we are at the 10-minute warning here. And no, we're not starting. I just want to make certain that everyone who wants to speak can do so now. So go ahead, please. Keep moving away.
So I understand the steps you've outlined there. My wife's telling me I have to calm down.
You are vocalizing very well, put it that way.
I understand the steps. What is the timeline? And ultimately, will there be any community involvement in the actual planning of the strategic plan? Because, you know, as a village father, and as a former Board of Ed member, it always seemed to come down to, well, let's just shake up Village. And the last plan had my children in village, and I say my children, I'm talking about the entire village community, splitting not once but twice, going to different middle schools and then again different high schools. So any plan, I want to know what the timeline is, what the expected timeline is, and is there going to be community involvement, actual community involvement in designing the plan, and will it take into account not just data, which is important, but the actual very real people that are going to go through whatever redistricting may or may not come out.
Right, that will happen. So the timeline is in November, we're going to do Form 2, is where we're going to look at the mission, the values, the beliefs of the district. So that sets our overall goals, and as well as coming up with our broad strategic direction. So what do we want to accomplish? And then, so that's going to happen partly in Form 2. And then in Form 3, we're going to identify discrete goals and prioritize them. So coming out of Form 3, there should be a good sense of what the strategic plan's going to look like. And then, of course, it will go to the board.
Okay, so again, will the community be involved in the actual planning or just input?
Well, that's what we're going to be doing in Form 2 and 3, is actually putting the flesh on these bones, so the latter.
Okay, maybe I'm missing your answer. Lovely. So the community is going to be part of the planning, or you're taking it and planning? I'm lost on one part.
Yeah, Form 2 and 3 is all about you. So you're there, and we're working in tables to do exactly that. So, so I think the answer to your question is you will be there, and you will be guiding and deciding this process. So you'll be there. So hopefully you'll be there. Excellent. All right, so we are closing in at 11:30. The only reason is we just can't type at this pace for more than an hour. But we'll stay and we'll copy down some of your comments on index cards after that point, and then we'll insert that into our record just as if you had spoken. So it's not like we're cutting you off at 11:30. It's we're just going to move to a different mode of collection, just so Stacy's arms don't fall off here. So we're going to abide by that. So Lynn, I think we had a couple more over here.
One here.
Yes.
Okay.
So I appreciate Vinny's questions. I, as well, was on the ad hoc committee that was part of the strategic plan last time around. And while we spent lots and lots of time together to try to submit something to the board that could be a valid plan, what came out of it was significantly different than the family said were their priorities. As you can see, there's tons of sensitivity around here. And I'm not from Middletown, but I'm proud to be in Middletown right now. I have always looked at it as one Middletown. I still have trouble with the north-south thing. It annoys the shit out of me, to be frank. But it runs long and deep, and it exists. The one thing that I want to be clear about is relative to Village Elementary. I think because of the bad feelings that we have around the choice, and I get it, my kids went to Village, I have one at college, I have one at South and one at Thompson. If I were not a Village parent, I'd be pissed too. It's a weird thing, right? We have a choice, no one else does. I don't understand that we have a choice and Bayshore doesn't, that blows my mind. But I like the choice, that's personal, right? Should it always exist? Probably not, unless across the district everybody had a choice, right? If we were able to cross lines and go where we want to go, then great. But I just want to be more specific about Vinny's question. When we sit around these tables in Forum 2 and talk about what the answer should be, are our proposals going to be what the board votes on? Or are you going to take the data and is the board just making a decision based on data?
Well, I think what happens to all of our work when it goes to the board is really a question for the board. They are the Board of Education, they are your democratically elected representatives, so I can't answer that question. All I can say is I've done lots of strategic planning, and for the most part, the board is going to take your work and be very impressed with it and do something with it. What they do with it is totally up to the board, and I can't. It's a question that I wish I could answer, but I can't. I really can't, because they are your elected representatives, but they are going through this process in exactly the way they should. I can tell you that much. We should, as always, work with them and try to get into the plan what you think is best for your children and for the community. So I can't answer that question.
I would like to just compliment the board and Dr. George for having this level of community involvement. It is an impressive approach, different approach to the way we've done it in the past, and your involvement extremely impressive that we were able to get in Strickland. I have to say that. No, seriously.
We are
That's a big
indeed. We
deal.
are indeed.
Well, it's a big deal. It's a big deal to be here. I don't live too far away, and you've got a great foundation of a community, and just some not little issues, but issues that really obviously need some fleshing out, and so maybe just rationale why things have happened, and conversation will move forward. We want to move forward. Are we done?
Okay, we have index cards. We'll pass them out, and please fill them out. We will stay here. I think Lynn will join me and stay here, and we'll answer. But by the way, you were great. Thanks so much, everyone. We hope to see